For the first time in a long time, the Toronto Blue Jays woke up in a playoff spot, and it cannot be understated the impact that these Buffalo guys have had on this team, and it coincides with Bo Bichette on his way back. So I'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse, and the Blue Jays won a second straight game against the Oakland A's yesterday. It was a collective effort. They took a while to wake up, but in the seventh inning, they erupted offensively, and the Blue Jays needed a blowout win. They needed to save their bullpen. They needed to do all of that, and they managed to do that yesterday against Oakland. They finally overtook the Texas Rangers for that final wild card spot. They got a 4-game set coming up against Kansas City and then against Texas, so a big stretch of games coming up here.
Yeah, and as bad as the Blue Jays have seemingly played, they've gotten the job done over the last two series against the Rockies, and hopefully they can complete the job today. Before we get into the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're very, very close to 800, so your support's been unbelievable. And let's get into the first topic, which is, like you said, Peter, the Jays are back in a playoff spot, and it was just a couple weeks ago we were making a video sitting in the exact same spot. Fangraphs had us at 39% chance to make the playoffs. We were 3.5 games back. The world was falling down, the ceiling was falling down, and here we are now. The Rangers are collapsing. The Jays are 0.5 games ahead of them in the wildcard spot, which is very notable because we have a huge series against them in a week or so. And Peter, the Buffalo guys are doing very, very well, but we do have some reinforcements coming, which I'll break down later. But let's start with yesterday's game before we get into the very big news regarding Bo Bichette. Peter, what did you see yesterday? It was a late game for me, a bit of a later game on the West Coast, but what a game from the hitting, I guess, hitters for a while, but it was so cold to start the game, and I was getting a little bit worried there at the start.
I was never worried, not for a second, against the Oakland Athletics. And the Blue Jays, they took a while to wake up there, but this was a stress-free win. At no point in that game was I ever stressed for the Toronto Blue Jays coming out victorious, and they look good. They look good in the seventh inning and on offensively. Their pitching was good all game long, and Chris Bassett, it was nice for him to have a nice long start, give that bullpen a bit of a break, and not have to worry too much, not have to have those high-stress pitches. He threw 8 shutout innings, 8 one-run innings, and he looked really good yesterday, and hopefully he can keep that going throughout the rest of the season. But the Jays had to come in here at the Oakland Coliseum and take care of business against the A's, and they went ahead and they did that. It wasn't always pretty at times. It wasn't always pretty in Colorado, but they won that series. They've already won this series now, but you can't take the foot off the gas. You got to go ahead and get the sweep. Texas is playing their worst possible baseball that they could be playing right now. They're giving you every chance to go ahead and separate yourselves from them. The Jays have a chance to go 1.5 games ahead of them today, which would be monstrous after being 3.5 games back just a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. So the Jays need to keep the foot on the gas. They got to go out and sweep Oakland. They got to go out and win another series against Kansas City and then get down to business against Texas.
Yeah, and of course, like you said, the Rangers are playing the Astros, and the Astros are starting to play a little bit better. And if we win today and the Rangers lose, like you said, we're a game and a half up. But either way, we're gaining ground. That's why this series was so crucial. And looking at some of the Buffalo guys you mentioned, Davis Schneider had a huge hit to center field. It was a deep double. And then Ernie Clement, and they didn't have a great game on the hitting side, but their fielding is very, very solid. And just a good overall game. It took him a while to get going. Alejandro Kirk's on a bit of a heater, an radar heater, especially since Danny Jansen's hurt. So that's very, very big. And overall, you look at this lineup, Peter, and if you would have told me back in March when the season was starting in early April that this was a lineup that we'd be, cheering for and going crazy about, I'd be very, very surprised. But it ultimately is what happens during the season. And a lot of other teams had injuries happen earlier in the year. We were healthy for a while, and now the injury bug is starting to catch up. But a quick one note before we move on a little bit here. But like you said, Chris Bassett, they needed this out of Chris Bassett. He was battling that little cut on his thumb or something like that. He was bleeding since like the 4th or 5th inning. The bullpen was pretty worn down. Eric Swanson's still hurt. Bowden Francis has been an unbelievable guy. I wouldn't be surprised if we might have a video on this in the future, maybe in the offseason, if he's battling with Alek Manoah for that 5th starter spot next year. But the bullpen needed a rest. Now we have a fully healthy, fully rested bullpen for tomorrow, for today's very, very important game. But Chris Bassett did everything he could, and that's back-to-back starts where he went 8 innings and gave up a minimal runs.
Yeah, the stuff's not great, but he just gives you a chance to win, and he has good movement on his pitches. He's a battler out there, and I love what I saw out of Chris Bassett yesterday. And I also want to give a shout out to Santiago Espinal as well. We've been ragging on the guy
It's a good
all
one.
season long. He's been on an absolute tear at the plate, hitting over 500 or something ridiculous like that in his last 20 odd something odd at bats. So he's been really giving the Jays some great at bats there. He's been stepping up defensively as well. And I'd like to see him step it up all the time. I'd like to see him go ahead and take the bull by the horns and take that second base job or take that third base job right now. But it all it took was for his job to be on the line now, and he's been performing really well. He's been one of the unsung heroes in this stretch for the Blue Jays. And I don't know where they would be without him in these past couple of series. He's come up with some big hits. He's been just overall solid. And that's the Santiago Espinal that made the All-Star team last year. That's the Espinal that hit nearly 280, 290 in 2021. He's a good player. He's just looking confident right now, and I want to see him keep it going.
Yeah, and it's huge, especially given Whit Merrifield's struggles as of late. He's really battling, and the injuries as well. We needed someone to step up, and it's been a collective effort, but the next man up approach has worked very, very well. And regardless of what happens in the offseason, I think Peter will be pretty set in a few of these positions going forward with our prospects. But any final thoughts on this before we move on to the big news regarding Bo Bichette that came out yet before yesterday's game?
Yeah, the Jays are biding time right now, and they're waiting for everyone to get back, which we'll touch on in a bit. But they're doing a good job. All the guys that have been called up, all the guys that have been platoon players all season long, they're really starting to step it up right now. And you have to when your key players like Jansen, Belt, and Bichette are hurt, and Chapman as well. Other guys got to go up and have that next man up mentality, and they're doing that right now.
Yeah, and speaking about the injuries, let's get into it. And this is huge for the Blue Jays, obviously. Bo Bichette's our best hitter. He's our best player, especially throughout this season. And he's the guy that the Jays have struggled without for the most part. Of course, we've had some guys step up, but this news came out before yesterday's game. And let's also, like you mentioned, Brandon Belt's been unavailable for the past few games as well. And that kind of increases the impressiveness of the Blue Jays win in this series. But the Brandon Belt's unavailable again for the Blue Jays yesterday. We don't know about his, results for today. But Bo Bichette, with his quad injury, took ground balls, and hit BP Tuesday. He's tracking towards a weekend return, possibly as early as Friday. And Peter, as good or as unfortunate as the injury is, this is about as good timing as you could have asked for Bo Bichette coming back right as the easier series are wrapping up against the Kansas City Royals. Maybe Bo Bichette will get in a game with the Kansas City Royals. I would like to see him play maybe one or two games before the huge Texas Rangers series that might end up deciding our fate with the playoffs this year. We get our best hitter back, and I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Matt Chapman, Brandon Belt, and hopefully Eric Swanson are coming back shortly after that as well.
It's September, and we remember what Bo did last September. So if he can get back into this lineup in one piece, he will be a massive addition to this team. And obviously, he is their best hitter. You could tell even his defense is being missed at shortstop at times because the replacements have just not been at that level. And you can't expect them to be at an all MLB level. You can't expect them to be all-star level. They're coming up from AAA, and they're doing a pretty fine job, but it's just not the same production as a 300 hitter, as a guy who's your number two hitter. So it's going to be a welcome sight to have him back in the Blue Jay lineup, and I just can't wait. Same thing for Brandon Belt. Same thing for Danny Jansen.
Chapman.
Hopefully, if he can get back for the playoffs. And Brandon Belt, I want to give a shout out to Spencer Horwitz. He's been holding it down, but Brandon Belt has probably been the second best hitter in this lineup, and he will be a welcomed addition as well.
Yeah, we need all of them back very, very soon. And this is what you kind of live for as a Jays fan. It's been a very, very rough season as a whole, disappointing season, but every single game matters now. It's very, very exciting, especially looking ahead into the series against the Royals. Got to win tonight's game, and then the huge series against the Rangers, which, as much as it is a regular season game, it's going to be about as playoff-like atmosphere as you can possibly go. But anything else you want to touch on here before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just can't wait for that. But us fans, we can look ahead. We can take a look at that series and circle it on our calendars. But the Blue Jays got to take this
Win
one
today.
game at a time. It all starts today in Oakland. Go ahead and get the sweep. We've seen this Jays team be a little bit lackadaisical when they wrap up series. We see them take the foot off the gas when they have the first 2 out of 2 wrapped up. But you can't do that against this Oakland team. You got to go out there and step on their throats, and you got to take 3 out of 3.
Yeah, and the fate is in their own hands now. They managed to get themselves back with that. But that'll wrap up the video. Hopefully, the Jays can go on a crazy, magical September run, and we'll be making videos for you guys all the way through. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.